Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Hi, this is Eric.
And this is Caleb.
And welcome back! It's Romulans Bearing Gifts, episode 53. Going deeper into Picard season 3. And obviously Caleb's back with us. Unfortunately, we don't have Kat or Carl, but that's okay. They're out there. They're on their way. They're en route. They're stuck in some amoeba nebula or something. But that being said, Caleb, I am dying to hear what you thought about the first two episodes in general of Picard season 3.
Oh god, this is why I wish Kat was here because I watched those first two episodes. I sat in front of them, they played in front of me, but I don't know how much I actually retained. I think I was just maybe I had my arms crossed after season 2, and so I was just kind of like, I can see they're making some improvements. I like Riker and Picard's kind of dynamic, but for the most part, I was just kind of tuned out. It wasn't until we got to this third episode that I was actually in analytical mode and paying attention fully. So it's kind of a
Okay, hold those episode 3 thoughts. We're not there yet. What about, because at this time you don't know mine and Carl's reactions in full on those first two episodes, but I'll tell you, me and Carl both have a thing for Captain Shaw, that character. Any thoughts particular on him?
I don't know. I could see him reminding me of old archetypes from TNG, but I wasn't too engaged by almost anything at all in those first two episodes. I didn't think they were bad, but I was just kind of just sitting and they're playing in front of me, and I was just kind of like, okay, more new Star Trek. This feels better than what we've seen before, but at the same time, it still feels very much like new Star Trek, is what I was thinking watching those two episodes.
Well, even though there are certain things that bind new Star Trek in general, I still kind of liken it to the Disney Plus Star Wars stuff, where there is something a little bit that binds all of them together, but I can still definitely tell which strain of Star Wars show I'm watching. Like, they still have their individual flavors, even if something connects them. And that's kind of how I feel about all the different Paramount Plus, CBS All Access, whatever, Star Trek content. That, yes, they are new Star Trek, and whatever that means. But they still have their individual flavors, feelings to me. And certainly, I mean, you have to say season 3 has a different vibe of Picard versus the first two, or no?
Yes. I would say this one feels closer to the first season as compared to whatever that little tangent was in the middle of that second season. And even from the first episode, I was like, okay, this feels considerably better than both those previous seasons. But I don't know, maybe I'm just beaten down, but I'm like, I just can't get excited for Picard himself anymore. Like, the character feels like he's dead at this point. At least that's what I was thinking. I'm not going to spoil my thoughts in this episode. But coming into this season and during the first two episodes, I was like, this character is like, he doesn't exist anymore. It's just Patrick Stewart on screen, and Riker's trying, but I don't know. There's just not much. Yeah, there just wasn't much that pulled me. I was happy to see some returning people back again, like Gates McFadden and Michael Dorn, but I don't know. It just, that kind of felt like, okay, we recognized that we fucked up and people didn't really like season 2. So now we're just going to try to bring you back in with these kind of things that you've seen before and that we know that you like. And we'll see if that kind of tricks you into liking this too. Again, I'm not spoiling my thoughts for this third episode, but that's how I felt during those first two. And maybe it's also hard to judge because with a serialized television show like this, it's not like those first two episodes were very individualized. They kind of felt just like one one piece that I was watching a part of at a different time. And so I don't really remember what happened sequentially in those first 2 episodes. They just kind of a blur.
Yeah, basically we have the first episode is basically like we need to try to somehow save Dr. Crusher. And it kind of ends on that cliffhanger on, oh my god, like the big bad ship appears at the cliffhanger moment. And I'm not going to explain Raffi's timeline. That one's pretty basic.
Oh god. Oof.
And then second episode is that first confrontation of actually meeting the antagonist at this point, the commander of the other ship. Which, what is Plummer's character's name? I think it's Vigna. I think is what it is. Do you have any thoughts on her up to episode 2?
When I saw her, I was like, "Oh, hey, there's that chick from So I Married an Axe Murderer." But no, I don't have much. I don't really know if they do have much character for her, at least up in those first
Well, I was
episodes.
gonna say, does she seem like another generic Kong clone or?
Oh, I was gonna save the con stuff till we got to this episode, but
Yeah,
she's absolutely in that mold.
yeah. I mean, Carl. I mean, yeah. Of course, we alluded to Khan. We alluded to Bana and his ship in Abrams 2009.
A little touch of Nemesis, maybe.
Nemesis. Yeah, Nemesis, certainly. Now, something that I consciously did not bring up, like I was aware of it in my head while we were recording, but I didn't bring it up because I felt like we already spent enough time with those other antagonists we just named right now. So I didn't bring up this additional person. But then Carl was berating me through messages since we recorded the last 2 episodes.
Oh no!
Because he was saying, why didn't you bring up so and so? And I was just like, oh, I felt like we had enough at the time. But so I'm making up for that right now because in retrospect, Carl really wanted to bring up General Kang from Undiscovered Country. Now he was in my mind last time we recorded, but like I said, I feel like we already mentioned enough other antagonists. But because Carl he really liked how Vigna did the little twirl in the chair. And yeah, in my mind, I was like, oh, yeah, that's like General Kang. But I just didn't say it out loud. And Carl was like, you should have said that. You should have said that. But in addition to that, though, the thing that I discovered in the interim. So, I know the actress's name is Amanda Plummer. And I thought, that's kind of like Plummer, like in Undiscovered Country. And I just dismissed that in my head. I only discovered like 2 days ago that she actually is his daughter in real life. I didn't know and I didn't realize. I just thought it was a coincidence that they had the same last name. So there you go, Carl. Have I fixed it? Because he was so mad I didn't bring any of this up.
Yeah, what's funny is I knew that she was his daughter, but I didn't make the connection to Star Trek 6. I wasn't even thinking about that at all. So yeah, I guess that makes it a little bit more fun that they brought her in here in this kind of generic part.
This generic part. Yeah, I'm not enthused about her that much. Seems like fans are. But she's not the worst either. She's not the worst thing out there. And plus, we're still learning more.
Yeah, and I'll say, I think maybe some of my mostly lack of engagement comes from I wasn't watching this because I wanted to watch it. I was watching it because I knew we were covering it on the podcast.
Well, yeah, I assume that off the bat.
So I, it's this. I don't feel like Star Trek Picard is ever necessarily going to be for me, and so I just come in, at a different place than maybe you and Carl, who are maybe giving it more of a chance than me. I'm just watching it out of obligation.
My short take on the first 2 episodes altogether is very simply that to me this really feels like a spiritual motion picture like sequel, like not sequel but continuing the TNG series post Nemesis, like if we were to have Star Trek 11 with this many years passing in real time, that this is what the movie would be like. Is the vibe I got very strong in the first 2 episodes combined.
Yeah.
And that's like completely ignoring Picard season 1 and season 2, because I never got those kind of vibes ever with those even though like episodes 1 of season 1 and 2 seem promising on their own. They didn't feel like Star Trek 11. They still felt like TV Trek or something like that. But this really feels like it has a Star Trek TNG cinematic feel to it, like none of those other things have. So that's my big takeaway. And and I'm surprised your reaction was, even though I know you're not a fan of any of this new Trek, still that was a more tepid, lukewarm response than I was expecting from you. Me and Carl were very positive, very positive. Now we still, are cautiously optimistic for the rest of the season, but we're pretty good so far.
Yeah, and I will say, I guess jumping into a little bit of early thoughts for this episode, it does make me curious if I go back and pay a little bit more attention, because I was paying attention. I was sitting there, but I wasn't like fully engaged. I wasn't writing notes and kind of keeping track of things as much. This episode, watching it that way, did come out a lot stronger than those first two. So I'm curious if maybe I just wasn't giving them enough a chance. But I also feel like a lot of the major drama happens in this episode. And those first two are more set up.
Yeah. And all three of these episodes so far, they engaged me all to the point where I kept checking time. Like, I don't want this to end yet. I don't want this to end yet. I don't want this to end yet.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, on all three episodes, I was like, oh, shit, there's 20 minutes left. Okay, damn it, there's 10. Oh, shit. Because to me, because it is so serialized, it unnaturally causes there to be like a ticking time bomb effect for me on every single episode. And it bothers me because it makes me feel unnecessarily anxious, because I find myself like, no, tell me more about the plot. Tell me more before time runs out. And so I said it multiple times. This is a series in particular, or season, that I wish I could just binge the whole thing. I don't like watching this piecemeal at all, because it is drawing me in, because it's sucking me so much. I'm not used to being forced to wait another week like in the old days when we always had to. I just want to watch the whole thing.
Yeah, and this series so far, at least, definitely does feel the most like it could have been a movie. And yeah, I guess that does make it a little bit more odd to watch in this format. Yeah, maybe it would have been nicer if it was just all out there, because that second season of Picard was just so all over the place, disorganized. It was just,
oh god,
just bizarre watching that week to week.
Yeah. And fine, if we're not going to binge it, I almost wish it was 2 episodes at a time, so it would be more like a mini series and have like almost like mini movie entries. Anything better than 1 episode at a time. But anyway, let's get to it. 17 Seconds is the name of the episode. I wish Carl was here, because if he was here, I'd have to say, oh, Carl, how'd you like that flashback at the beginning? Because Carl hates flashbacks at the beginning of episodes.
Oh, really?
Generally speaking, yeah. He really doesn't like them. But that being said, the only one thing I'll bring up about that short scene at the beginning of this episode is, it doesn't say exactly when it happened. It just says before. And I don't know about you, but I noticed some heavy digital de-aging on Sir Patrick Stewart. It was kind of like a weird homage to those flashback scenes in X-Men Last Stand. Do you remember that?
I do definitely remember Last Stand, yes. Oh my god.
But do you remember those scenes where they sort of de-aged Patrick Stewart when he was going to go recruit?
It was shocking.
Did you notice it in this episode of Picard? I mean, just the flashbacks.
I definitely noticed it, but it was not making me think of Last Stand, because I was so jarring in that. Here it was just, it was there, but
on my television there was an intense TikTok Snapchat filter on Patrick Stewart's face. It was intense, the way they were just like smoothing all the wrinkles out of his face. and it made him look it. Okay, not to spoil where we're going, but hey, this is a spoiler podcast anyway. But honestly, Picard looked like a changeling because of his like weird, smooth, waxy skin. At least that's the way he looked on my television.
Yeah, and further spoilers, we recently watched an episode of TNG that we'll be covering soon, and watching that, and then the next day watching this episode, it reminded me why I can't necessarily connect this version of Picard with the old TNG version. I'll say this episode gets a hell of a lot closer than any other episode of Picard I've seen up to this point. But just the way he carries himself, the way the character interacts with other people, it's so dramatically different. And some of it may come down to just Patrick Stewart's age. Just the way he plays the character. Maybe he doesn't remember how he used to do it. Everything is the mannerisms. It's almost jarring watching the two back to back.
I kind of know what you're saying. I'm distracted by something else. And I know it comes across as ageist or something. But in general, just Patrick Stewart, the actor, it is noticeable to me that he just comes across as more physically tired.
Yeah.
When he's performing. And it was even more glaring in the flashback scene because, again, he's de-aged a bit. Riker's de-aged a bit. And it was kind of like The Irishman where like the characters were de-aged, but there's something about their body language that they were still shuffling around like old men. That's what I got from like when The Irishman, during the scenes that took place like in the 50s, like our principals look younger, but they're just still hobbling around, and that's like what? That is, like what's going on here?
Yeah, I'm so anti that technology. I could not bring myself to sit through that thing.
The Irishman.
That's like, oh yeah,
it's a good movie, but
yeah, I can imagine it could be, but that technology I just find so jarring and just terrible that I just could not stomach it for that length of time.
The thing about that technology, whether it's that or it's the face swapping stuff like for Luke and Mandalorian, the thing about this technology is that for some reason you see better versions of it on TikTok than you do in these multi-thousand, multi-million-dollar like projects. That's the part I can't wrap my head around. Like, why are there more convincing shots like on an app on a phone versus like a professionally produced show?
Yeah, I kind of wonder if it's maybe the screen size. Maybe it's easier to do that on a small screen versus a big blown up movie screen, or I guess TV screen for The Irishman.
Perhaps. Honestly, in The Irishman, I didn't actually notice it that much because the technology. Because, like, when the actors or the characters were supposedly like in their late 20s, 30s, they looked like they were in their 50s. Now the actors are in their 70s, but they didn't look like they were in their 30s to me. So I almost felt like they didn't de-age them enough. So that was the weird thing, yeah, for me. But anyway, let's just talk about everything that's not Star Trek. So yeah, that's it for just the first 60 minutes of the episode. So the other thing that had been bothering me just with the first two episodes is that I'm all into this story, but I need some information. I need some reveals. Like, who the hell is the actual enemy? Like this Shrike ship, what technology is this? Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
What the hell? Like all this mystery. Don't like it. And the other thing I kind of don't like is so whatever this threat was, it seems to have infiltrated everything, like Federation, Klingon, Romulan, whatever. And I've just about had it with like covert Federation types, like secret society, whatever. Like, no. I can't anymore. They did it really well, sort of, in Undiscovered Country. And every time they've done something like that since, I just can't. There can't be so many like secret cell groups hidden within the Federation. So that's why I need to get this GD reveal, because and that's what's. There's nothing wrong with serialized storytelling, but when it feels like you're prolonging things unnecessarily, that's when it starts to bother me. So yeah, finally we start getting some answers in this episode.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me derail us one more time.
Sure.
Did you notice at the end of the second episode there was a little musical cue stinger, and then it happened again at the beginning of the third episode? The Voyager sound effect, I'll call it.
No, I didn't notice.
Do you know that Voyager sound I'm talking about from Jerry Goldsmith? The one from the motion picture that goes like brown.
Oh yes, yep, I do.
Okay, so they played like a note of it at the end of episode 2, and I forgot to bring that up on the podcast. And then boom, at the beginning of when we rejoin the action with the Titan, it starts off with that brown. I cannot do it justice with my mouth, but if people are familiar with the motion picture soundtrack, you know what I'm talking about. It's like a weird brassy piano-y kind of sound. Fun facts on that sound effect I just discovered. So the sound guy who created that sound effect, like he created this stringed instrument, like kind of using parts of a piano, and what's that oh my gosh, what's that instrument that you play that's like a guitar in your lap, and you slide like the metal thing along the fretboard?
I was gonna say a cello, but no, I think it is a cello.
No, like in bluegrass music, country music.
Oh yes. Oh yeah, what is that thing called?
And not the harpsichord. It's this other thing that anyway.
Yes.
So anyway, this guy created his own instrument that is kind of like that lay flat guitar like thing, except bigger. And he's the one who created that sound effect for the motion picture. He's also the same guy who used the same instrument to create the iconic sound effect for Jango Fett's like sonic charges, or those the thing in Attack of the Clones. Remember that bomb that goes?
Yeah.
Everybody knows, and was used again in Book of Boba Fett. Okay, so the guy who made that sound effect, like fun fact about him, I don't have his name in front of me, but when he was a child actor, he actually acted in 2 different episodes of TOS as a child. I think the episode's called Operation Annihilation, the finale of season 1 TOS. The one where Kirk's brothers dies. This child actor played Kirk's brother's son, so it would be Kirk's nephew, and he's like this little redhead kid who just looks like a little redhead kid from the 1960s. If you could imagine what that looked like in your head, that's exactly what the kid looks like. And he also played in the TOS episode, the one with like the space hippie kids.
Oh God.
So this little redhead kid, I've always been a fan of that sound in the motion picture. I never would have known it was actually that kid from. Anyway, there you go. There's your fun Star Trek facts of the episode. So kind of nutty that near the beginning of the episode, Captain Shaw gets injured.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a massive fan of this character. Despite his confrontationalism and his lack of respect for our legacy characters, he just seems really well done, like well acted, well designed as a character on paper and in performance, in my opinion. And I like his counterpoint, because there is a tendency in any edition of Star Trek, especially Star Trek movies, where the crew can just kind of do whatever they want wherever they go at any time, because they are who they are, the heroes. And I think he's an effective counterpoint to them. And he gets ridiculously injured near the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
Which is fine, except you would think that should be a more common occurrence. I mean, if that's the case in Star Trek, like we should get a lot more bridge crew who get injured in such ways. Even though I brought up on one of the previous 2 episodes of RBG, I still haven't figured out why we have such ridiculous explosions on bridges on Starfleet vessels, because like There's no reason why that should be happening at all. Even if you are having power surges and whatnot, I would think, in our day and age, we have circuit breakers and things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why it's not possible. Like, it would be insane if you were like on a modern day naval vessel and your ship was like crashing into icebergs or taking enemy fire. I mean, that's one thing, the ship taking damage, but could you imagine a naval vessel, like screens exploding and like cables falling out of the ceiling? Like,
Yeah.
it wouldn't make any sense, but whatever. And Shaw gets flipped over, gets insanely like physically injured. And he reverts command codes and whatever to Riker. So Riker's effectively in charge now officially.
Yeah, and I'll say before he gets injured, I did kind of like the dynamic. It was almost making me think of Star Trek Generations with Kirk just kind of watching as the disaster unfolds, and he's kind of in the sidelines. I kind of liked seeing Picard and Riker in the sidelines, just being like, "Oh crap! Like everything's going wrong." They look like two like old men just kind of chattering together. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah,
And I was starting to grow on this captain here. He's even kind of reminding me of Captain Jellicoe a little bit. He didn't have quite the flair, and I wasn't liking him as much. But I was like, he could have something here. And I was like, oh, of course they just took him out of the way so these two could take over. And oh god, actually, I'm watching the scene right now of them de-aged, and it does look worse than I gave it credit for the first time. Oh boy.
Thank you.
I actually think Riker looks worse. His face just looks like it's painted on.
I'm looking at Riker now. I just skipped right to it.
Oh, it's all right. I can't remember where I was. I'm so distracted by this scene now.
Shaw reminding me of the other captain.
Yeah.
And then watching the two old guys just like kind of like mincing their faces over there.
Yeah, it's like I was starting to like that dynamic, and then it just immediately gets ripped away, and then it changes up for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, over in sickbay, Dr. Crusher and Sun are sort of assisting in sickbay, and the ship's doctor is just like, get out of here. You've been out of things for 2 decades. You don't understand like the advancements we've had.
Yeah.
You knew that was going to come around to bite that doctor, that was way too obvious.
Yeah, it felt like a false note. I was like, why did they include this? Is this to give Beverly like a storyline in this episode? She's already kind of gone with Picard. I don't know if we needed that for her to overcome there. It seemed a little bit, forced.
But of course they were setting up when the captain is brought in and things start going sideways with his health right there in the ER in sickbay, and the normal ship doctor doesn't know what to do. But of course, Beverly has her medicine woman. I can't remember the name of that show with Seymour.
Dr. Quinn.
Dr. Quinn. Yeah, she has her Dr. Quinn frontier experience. And then she's like, oh, let me push you right here and release. And he's like, oh, he's bleeding internally, don't you know? And then she's like, a lot of times this doesn't get picked up on scan. What?
Yes, I was thinking the same thing.
Are you kidding me?
What the fuck is one of these scanners?
Are you? If that's a true statement, they must be having like dozens upon dozens of unnecessary deaths in this time. If rudimentary things can't be sorted out by like a supercomputer, and then for doctors just to trust their instruments when they have flaws like that, what?
Yeah, it's like, this is kind of unfair to this doctor. Now they're like portraying her as like some shitty doctor. I thought Starfleet does pretty good with who they hire, but she's just, if the instrument doesn't say it, there's nothing there. He must just be, coughing up for no reason.
Yeah, it's completely insane because it's basically dying by like a fairly ordinary, like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, where's Bones?
You don't. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it was definitely a false note.
But okay, fine, whatever. A little hero moment for Crusher. Okay, let's get to this scene where Picard and Beverly have their little confrontation because there's a little lull in the action. Mm-hmm. They're in the nebula away from the Shrike or whatever, and so finally, because obviously Picard had no knowledge of having a son or any of this. No one knows where Beverly's been for 20 years. She cut off contact to everyone. And they have this little scene, and she tries to explain why she never told him. And I don't know about you, but just focusing on this bit of dialogue, this is just my personal opinion. Me and Carl had so many great things to say about Case McFadden's performance, at least with episodes 1 and 2. But with this particular scene, I felt like the writers made Dr. Crusher to look like a crazy person. When she's trying to explain and justify why or how she could never tell Picard.
See, I feel like it's a little bit the opposite. I feel like the writers did the best that they could to contrive a reason why Dr. Crusher wouldn't tell him. It's just Gates couldn't carry the scene. She was kind of reminding me of when Sophie Aldred and Janet Fielding showed up in The Power of the Doctor. And it was like you could see the rust at the edges of their performances.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she was finding that early stuff in this season. But when you give her a really dramatic, weighty scene like this, that rust, she can't get past it.
I see a little bit of the rust you're talking about, I guess, in my head. But that wasn't what was bothering me, though. Any rust on performance. It wasn't that. It was literally soaking in the dialogue and analyzing the thought process of the character as written. That's the part that bothered me. And to me, made her seem like a crazy person. Based upon her logic, her character's logic.
I think her logic makes sense. I mean, Picard. I mean, this guy, his clock should have been, broken years ago.
Well, wait. Do you see this in the real world where,
no,
someone has a kid with someone, but let's say he's some, I don't know, high power. He's like an Elon Musk executive type who's constantly busy 24/7. Oh, and I was going to tell you, but then you had to go to that business trip to Australia.
Wow.
And then when you got back from that, I was going to tell you, but then you got called to the UN Council. And then, and eventually I just realized, oh, this is just the way it's going to be because everyone wants Elon Musk.
No, that's not a fair comparison.
But I'm not saying that Picard is Elon Musk or vice versa. You just got to fucking tell him. You don't have to pick the perfect sunset and like the perfect mood, and you got to give them 2 weeks off from their last adventure.
No,
you just have to pass the knowledge.
I think you're misunderstanding what her point was there. It wasn't that Picard never had a free moment. It was any time that she would have had a chance to tell him, he had just survived a near-death experience, and then she's like, "Oh crap, that near-death experience. What if he's not around for my son? Maybe that's the wrong reason. Maybe I should just tell him. Oh shit, he almost just died again." So it's like, do I really want to bring such an unstable element into my child's development? Was her point. Not that he was too busy.
Well, you're right. It's also about that bit as well as what you just said, but I still don't think that justifies ultimately what she did.
I agree. It doesn't justify.
Again, it makes you sound like a crazy person. It still makes her sound like a crazy person. Even if she doesn't want Picard to be in her child's life, hey, that's fine. I can jive with that.
I don't think it makes her crazy now. I mean,
I do because it just comes across as completely ludicrous.
Well, that's the problem.
I can't imagine like anyone else keeping that kind of secret for 20 years.
Well, she just completely cut him off, but
right.
So it wasn't like she needed to keep the secret.
But still,
that's the problem. Trying to rationalize things that are so beyond our scope of experience. Because I mean, who out there in this world today is like a James Bond, where every other week they've got this near-death experience that they have to battle. I don't think it's as common in real life as it is. I mean, think about the program that she was on, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Every episode, chaotic.
I know you're right you're right. There's no one in real life who is having their life threatened on such a regular basis. That said, okay, that's the world you live in. So then you just go with it. That's the world we live in, where people are constantly in the threat of life. Okay. Well,
yeah, and don't get me wrong. I do think that she made the wrong decision. I think when Picard is kind of berating her for like, you don't get to decide this for me. I could have, if you would have told me, I would have changed my life. I wouldn't have been the same man. And like, you just ripped this away from me. I think all that was really dramatic, and I think it was really well done. And it was actually the first time since was it All Good Things, the last episode of TNG?
Yes.
I feel like this is the first time seeing these characters again. Because with the TNG movies, I never felt like those were the same characters. Almost all of them just felt like the shades were just completely off. This one scene between these two is, yeah, it feels like, wow, we're finally getting a piece of TNG again.
I don't disagree with that, what you just said. My bigger complaint with the TNG movies, as far as the characters are concerned, was that there was definitely so much more focus always on Picard and Data.
Yep. Ugh.
And then people like Dr. Crusher, Geordi, Troy were such in the background. And like, yeah, they would throw them like a bone, like a
Yep.
scene here or there. But they were never part of really like the thrust of any of the movies.
Yeah, and suddenly Picard isn't the diplomat anymore. Now he's the Kirk, punch him up guy. Ugh.
I didn't think about that. But you're right, he kind of is. But I'll give him like an old guy pass for that. No, I mean, just that I could see it not just with Picard, but just, a certain segment of guys like in their twilight years just kind of being like, hey, you know what? Who cares? I mean, not that you're trying to endanger others around you or anything, but just why not be a little bit more brash?
Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't seem Picard-ish to me, but
Yeah, that's kind of true as well. So thank goodness we finally, because of course we all noticed in the first 2 episodes, random side characters giving side eye to the camera.
yes.
Which was like, okay, who are these guys? Thank goodness we finally got some reveal on that in this episode. So, good for young Picard.
Yeah, Jack.
His name. It's Crusher, Jack Crusher, who, as I mentioned to Carl, check out I love seeing this actor. Like he came from Downton Abbey.
Oh,
and he played a very different character on Downton Abbey, but good on him. Like I feel like he is so matured as an actor performer in this, like carrying on from Downton Abbey. But anyway, so good for Crusher, because I was kind of like, I understood the clue about like looking at the blood on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Like and I figured it's weird. My brain was first thinking, oh, the Shrike has the technology to track like DNA and blood, and and like they're literally tracking like hemoglobin. Like that, my mind went there for like a split second, but then I was like, oh no, they're probably giving off some type of emissions or something that's giving away their location. And so of course, we discovered the sabotage. All right, great. And then when Jack has that, the fight with the saboteur. And yeah, when we saw the face glitch,
mm-hmm.
My mind went straight to Changeling. And I was thinking, it's been a while since we've seen that race anywhere in Star Trek, so they're due for something because just coming off of the first 2 episodes, I sadly felt like this was going to be another Romulan manufactured situation, because the Shrike has some type of, even though it's not traditional, it has some kind of weird Romulan look to it. And I know it's not green either, but it still had a Romulan look. And so I'm glad it's not the damn Romulans again, because that's been done to death already. Changelings, that kind of makes sense that there could be some, I can't remember what those guys were called. The group of Confederates who didn't stop, like after the end of the Civil War, who just like kept going. I can't remember what those guys are called, but that would make sense that there'd be a faction of changelings like that. Explains, all these other questions we had about how are there like Klingons and this and that. So that's all good. The only part of my mind where it gets not good for a hot second is because in my brain, my brain extended it out to, even though this is not Disney and this is not MCU or anything, it almost made me feel like this was under the MCU banner, or Disney, I should say, because I was like, oh man, this like, this smacks of like the whole like Krull invasion thing in MCU, and that's the problem with the MCU. It's like they're playing out all the storylines for everything, and so it makes it so there's not much left.
Yeah, no, I could see the comparison to the scrolls, and yeah, I guess that's just baked into the material. You can't really help that, but I was happy to see the changelings again. Although it did start to feel like, okay, new Star Trek as well. They just constantly have to pull back to stuff we've seen before. You know, in Strange New Worlds, we're getting all this Gorn stuff. Of course, Picard Season 2, bringing back Q, and then all the Borg stuff there. It's like, let's try to pave some new paths. But again, I don't feel like the changelings have been seen all that much in the past, like 25 years, 30 years. So it's fine to go back to them. I don't mind that too much.
No. It's not Star Trek's fault per se, because I was just saying because MCU has tendrils everywhere now.
Yeah,
between its series and its expansive movies, that they're covering so much stuff from time travel to everything else. That if somebody else does it, even though they're independent, it just feels like Marvel already did it because Marvel's doing everything. Because obviously Marvel just, has been hammering their multiverse stuff.
Yeah.
So inevitably when the next DC movie comes out, it's going to be like, oh, look, now DC's doing it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay. But it's not just that, though, about the MCU. Also, though, ever since Abrams' Trek was created with Kurtzman, etc., I noticed that they would pull from comic book tropes, here and there selectively. I mean, the whole idea of having an alternate Kelvin timeline is such a comic book move. And I feel like Kurtzman and company, that they go to the comic book well every now and then for things like that. So that's why my spidey sense gets a little bit more tingly with this and thinking about the Skrull invasion, just because I know those guys are comic book nerds. But it's fine. It's not a deal breaker.
Yeah, I just realized there was something I meant to mention during my little opening discussing those first 2 episodes. And it was really solidified here with the scene we were just talking about with Beverly and Picard having their kind of big emotional blow up. And that's during season 1, and especially during that ridiculous second season, the show was filled with extremely bizarre, non-human dialogue. It felt like it was like written by like a second-rate Shakespeare or something. Everyone was always having this bizarre, flowery dialogue. I'd be like, who the hell's writing this? Like some college student, like fresh out of school, some hack, probably Akiva Goldsman. And this scene in particular with their kind of dramatic discussion, I was like, wow, this feels, even though it's a little bit contrived, it feels like 2 human beings talking to each other, not just some like cartoon storybook like Stephen Moffat would write to.
Oh dear.
It didn't feel like a fairy tale. It felt like real people. So that's another big positive for this season so far.
Yeah, there's no question. The writing, dialogue, etc., is way better in season 3 versus 1 and 2, and I'll say some more about that indirectly later in this conversation if I remember. But let's see, what did I want to get to? Oh, okay. So, oh my gosh. So the Shrike, not only is it ridiculously overpowered, but they got that damn portal weapon, the one that Rafi saw used on the Starfleet Recruitment Center. Oh, this thing is insane.
Oh, it's cool.
well, no, I understand how it functions. That's fine. If anyone's played Portal, or the game I've been playing heavily for the last 2.5 years is Splitgate. Nobody knows what it is, but it's sort of like Halo with the portal gun, basically, is kind of what it is. Anyway, so yeah, I'm fine with that. But the way they employ or deploy it perfectly, the Shrike every time, that's the part I don't like. How they always perfectly place the portal every time so that it does exactly what they want it to do. And I guess, I don't know, who knows, with supercomputers of the 25th century or whatever.
Yeah.
it's just when you're playing video games, you never get it perfect that much all the time, every time, the first time. Like, so it was too perfect for me that they always put it exactly where the Titan couldn't avoid it. And then it would just place things exactly to the strike's advantage every single time without flaw. And boy, oh boy, it really seems like the Titan should have already been destroyed in this episode, because I've never seen a ship take such a beating before.
Yeah.
And to be relatively unscathed the way it is bonkers. Obviously, whatever's going on with the nebula not being a regular nebula will probably play big into the next episode.
Yeah, and that's another point of intrigue that I was kind of slumped in my seat, and once I started talking about that, I kind of sat up. I was like, okay, this sounds like it's going to reach some potentially cool stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely intrigued by that.
It seems like, however, the Enterprise is not Enterprise. However, the Titan's going to somehow make it out of the situation is somehow going to hinge on those living nebula.
Yeah.
Before we get to sort of like the climax or finale of this episode, so as much as overall I'm enjoying this season and I'm like really engrossed in it as I'm watching it, but every time the location shifts from the Titan to wherever Raffi is,
oh my god,
I just get completely like, oh, like I will be on the edge of my seat for the Titan scenes, and then as soon as it cuts to Raffi, I go, oh man, and I'm just like, oh, like I literally just want to fast forward.
100%. Even with the Ferengi, I've been wanting to see them come back. I was like, fuck, they're pairing him up with Raffi. Seeing Worf come back, pairing up with her, God, it's just miserable. She's just like a charisma vacuum. And I hated her little scene of being like, oh, I don't need a babysitter. I don't need a protector. Right after he literally just saved her from her obvious death. I was like, God, I wish she hadn't saved her. I'm just so sick of this character. I don't know why they brought her back. They ditched everybody else. They should have just... maybe she comes cheap.
I don't know how much this affects the creators or not, or maybe they're feeling the same vibe, because there's definitely a vocal minority out there who love Raffi, love the actress, love her performances, love her character. I suspect there's some kind of strain of that feeling amongst the production staff. Has to be. And again, whatever I'm saying, it's no offense to the actress herself or whatever. It's just the way this character is designed. And I understand this is an important subplot, presumably, that she's on. It's just not well done. And then once Worf saves her and explains why he told her not to engage, and then when they try to, pull off kidnapping this guy who they just somehow conveniently find in the middle of the metropolis, like he's just right. But and then they go through capturing him and then interrogating him, and she's going full Guantanamo Bay on his ass.
It's just so bad. She's terrible in that scene. I don't think her dynamic with Worf works at all. Like, there's that scene when she discovers who he is. She's like, oh my gosh, you're like a legend. It's just something about it felt really just a little fake.
And her special power is that she can empathize with a
like a drug addict.
Yeah, a former drug addict or someone going through withdrawal. Even though it turns out that's not actually what's going on with the actual character. And then, okay, once they get through all that stuff, like, if you considered her interactions, her early interactions with Worf, let's say we're considering that as a job interview, I don't understand how Worf is like, you know what? You're my partner and we're doing this together.
No.
What? What?
Yeah, she was wrong about everything. She's failed time and time again in front of him. It'd be like, maybe go check yourself into like a rehab clinic. I'll take care of this myself. Like, she's just a big fuck up. And
I have no idea what she's been contributing. The only thing she ever contributes is how once she gets onto something, she can't get off it. And I don't mean drugs. I mean, once she has her eyes on a target, she cannot be wavered. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, no matter if it's a suicide run, if she's completely unprepared, Yeah, no, it whenever we cut to her, that's when I would just start to tune out again. And I think we got more of her in the previous 2 episodes, and I think that was one of the factors that just kept putting me off. I was like, man, why are we cutting to her? In especially in those first 2 episodes, the two plots felt so wildly disconnected. I couldn't see any sort of through line until they revealed this portal weapon and then eventually the changelings. So I was like, okay, at least I understand now why we're seeing this just completely out their plot.
And also, I'm curious what because of the trailer, I have some ideas in my head that I won't speak out verbally. But I was going to say, I'm curious what the actual ultimate weapon is they stole from the Daystrom Institute, if not the portal gun. Which, again, if you've seen the trailer, I have a feeling it might be that thing, but I won't say it out loud for those who have preserved themselves from not watching the trailers.
Yeah, me and Carl.
Yeah.
We're the only ones.
I hope I'm wrong, but I have a feeling it might be that thing. But
yeah, and I'll say I really like the portal. I think it's super duper cool and feels fresh for Star Trek, especially this modern stuff, which almost never feels fresh to me. So that's nice. And it's almost making me feel like, seeing this now, it's like, has the Federation like fallen behind? Is technology moving past them and they're still kind of stuck in their old ways?
Well, no, I think what it is, because again, this was stolen from the Daystrom Institute, so
that's true.
So they had it. So I guess what they're doing is kind of like what we do in our society, which is we say, like, due to Geneva Convention, like, biological warfare is off the table. Obviously, nuclear weapons have to be like a last resort type thing. I think that's what it is. That, and we saw different things over the course of Next Generation, etc., where there was some type of crazy technology, but the Federation just decided, no, we have to put this away because this is just potentially too. And it's also like their aversion to eugenics and like gene altering and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It does seem like maybe a weapon that they wouldn't consider fair game for a Federation ship to have. There's almost something kind of cruel about it.
Well, yeah, especially how it's employed here. Now, okay, now let's get to the main event, the climax of this particular episode, which is, and they lay the seeds visually, right away. So Riker's officially put in charge of the Titan, but of course Picard there. And at first, for a glancing moment, Picard does amazing as in the number one role, firing off this like strategic torpedo or whatever, like on the fly. You should call me number one. Yeah, we're great. But you can tell because they're losing so badly against the Shrike that Picard wants to go all aggro, aggressive, in tactic, and Riker just is completely in defensive escape mode. And they almost hammer it one or two times too many.
Yes,
the way they clash, the characters. So what do you think about all this?
I think it's interesting. Part of the thing that rings a little bit false to me is the fact that Riker keeps hammering like, "Oh, your mind's getting confused because Jack's on board. You want to protect Jack. Oh, that's why you're pushing for this." But it's kind of like, it does seem like Picard has the more logical edge. I don't really get why Riker's so intent on not trying to fight. So the dramatic weight of it just doesn't quite connect for me. I like the tension, but it just, yeah.
When we get to the point where they're arguing on the bridge and Riker has gone through the portal like a dopey dope like 3 times already. And then you see like the bridge members like looking over their shoulders. It was getting painful at that point.
I agree. That was the edge when it's like the underlings.
It really made it seem like, Riker, what the fuck are you doing? Like it'd be like if Lucy kept putting the football out for Charlie Brown and like she pulls it away and he like flips over his back and then he does it again. Now I'm fine, Riker, if you're just like, we want to be on the defensive escape mode, but you got to try something different.
Yeah.
You can't do the same thing over and over. And yes, when they're having their verbal debates, it does seem like like Picard is making a lot more sense, and whether his son is there or not, that seems ridiculous because
Yes.
he's still going to try to do the most either way. Whether his son was there or not, he's still going to try to do the most for them not to die.
Yeah, it felt like they wanted to make sure to hammer in. They're like, these two men are motivated by the different reactions to their son. Oh, Riker doesn't want to lose more people because he lost his son. And now he thinks that, or I guess maybe they're supposed to frame it as Picard wants to save people because he's recently discovered his son. But it just doesn't, even though they're hammering it, it just doesn't
because
connect.
Also, generally speaking, both of these characters, as we've known them through the years, are not, yes, they have emotions, but they're not like emotional decision makers.
Yes, 100%.
Typically, neither one of them. So that's a bit jarring. And then, okay, so Riker's looking like a fool, like I said, because he's making the same ropey mistake over and over. The crew is starting to get shook because they're like, what the fuck is going on? So then when he relents to Picard and says, all right, we're going to do this, and then they do the torpedoes and then the portal gun, and then it immediately backfires and they shoot themselves. What? So now Riker is pissed at Picard and sends him off the bridge?
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
What? No, because ultimately it was still your decision at every step of the way. And just because something happened that nobody saw coming, like, how is that Picard's fault? Again, as if your strategy was doing swimmingly well.
Yeah, and that's the shame, because I do feel overall that this is the best episode of the Picard series that I've seen so far. Like, so much of it works. But yeah, no, that whole thing just felt like old school Picard writing, just contrived. Let's just force this conflict because we constantly need to have conflict. Go watch TNG. Everyone was trying to help each other, uplift each other, try to figure out solutions. This is like two old men just bickering for what? Because they woke up on the wrong side of the bed? Like, I don't really get it.
But hold on, counterpoint. Because despite everything I just said, to see the conflict itself between Picard and Riker, the conflict and strategy, and to see them really holding to their guns, so to speak, I actually like that part. I like that part a lot.
Yeah.
And the tension and the disagreement and the not being on the same page. I like that. Because contrary to what you just said a second ago, that was the thing. I've sort of said it on multiple podcasts in different ways. That's the thing that I really wanted to come out of the 90s Trek universe. Like TNG was a great run as a show. And then DS9 started showing us that there's more possibilities in storytelling out there. And I always wanted to see that advance even further beyond DS9. Meaning, I would like to see conflict between crew members here and there along the way, because everything being so sterilized under the Roddenberry doctrine, where it was part of his marching orders that they should never fight amongst themselves. I always hated that. I mean, not always, but once TNG had its run, like, okay, like, we need to evolve, I always felt. And I was always hoping for more humanity, like flaws of humanity. Not necessarily to go over the top with it, but just to have something to make things seem more real or true to life. So this type of conflict that we're seeing, I kind of wish we had got that decades ago in TV Trek. The part where I'm quibbling is where the arguments don't make sense.
Yeah.
Or the motivation doesn't make sense. I quibble with that. But to have the actual intense bickery, that part I like.
Yeah, I don't like the bickering. I like the spot of tension, the disagreement, and strategy. Yeah, they just do it completely wrong. But no, I always feel like the Federation, there's that level of professionalism where you don't get emotionally involved. You argue it out strategically and logically. This, it just feels like Riker found like he got fixated on something and would refuse to change his mind no matter what was presented to him. That's what it feels like. And that doesn't really feel like Riker to me.
Right, I agree with that.
But yeah, no, what else do we... I guess we haven't discussed Jack too much and his relationship with Picard. which they kind of flesh out a little bit more in this episode. Still not a ton, but a little bit more in those first two, I think.
It seems to be going fine to
Yeah.
me so far.
Agreed.
So all things considered.
It's okay. Yeah. It's not great, but it's okay.
And again, most of the harm was because of Dr. Crusher's weird decisions of the past, which I already covered.
Yeah.
And that's really where it comes from. A weird Easter egg that somebody on YouTube noticed. I didn't notice this myself. But the flashback that happens at the beginning of episode 2, where we see Jack Crusher trying to deliver those medical supplies or whatever.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He says he's working for some Mariposa like health organization or something. Weird Easter egg for Picard. That's the organization that Rios' girlfriend on Earth in the 21st century. That's where she worked. Remember she worked at that clinic for refugees? It was called the Mariposa whatever Foundation.
Oh, what a wonderful reference. Call back to that piece of crap plot. Yeah, that was an okay scene. I didn't mind him chatting with those guys. There's a slight touch of Han Solo creeping in there with that scene for him. So yeah,
kind of Han Solo, but kind of something else because, like I said on the podcast, like almost like a Robin Hood type thing. Like he's obviously breaking tons of rules, but for the greater good.
Yeah. So I'm fine with Jack so far. He hasn't quite won me over. I'm not excited to see their relationship flourish, but I'm fine with what they're doing so far with it, and I'm willing to accept this kind of big change up.
What do you think of the ploy where, of course, because everyone had these questions, and so did me and Carl after the first 2 episodes, why the British accent? Because as we know, accent doesn't get passed down through your genes. So, why does Jack... And then they explain it in this episode. Because, of course, Picard's like, in the accent? Oh, he went to school. He went to a school in London. He just picked up the accent and couldn't drop it, couldn't lose it.
I think she even said maybe it's in his DNA.
I'm gonna ignore that part.
No, it was clearly just a one-off. I mean, it felt like the accent was only there.
No, but was it just to make us be confused the first 2 episodes? Because it serves no other function.
Oh, I thought it was an obvious hint, like, oh, this is him.
Well, no, it is a hint. But then it makes you think again, like how do you explain that? Like it makes it seem like the Jack is not a natural birth, that there's some kind of witchcraft or technology involved.
No, you're forcing this out of me. I did want to say it, but he was making me think a little bit of Shinzon from Nemesis.
Yes, exactly. But that would be ridiculous to go down that road again.
I was even thinking, I was like, oh, he should be bald. That would really tell us that he's Picard's son if he's bald.
Oh, hell no.
But no, yeah, it was almost like a wink at the audience. Like, of course it's his son. He's British. Even though it doesn't make sense.
Even though Picard's French. But yeah.
Yeah, it's all... those are those obvious notes. That,
I guess... Yeah, her next question would have been, why do you have a British accent? Well, I went to school in London.
Yeah, those are the things I try not to think about, but I can't help it.
So yeah, everything's been fine. I like it, and it's just, yes, I would though like to see or get caught up with Geordi.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, I felt like Deanna Troy's little appearance in like the Hollow transmission. That did not do her any favors.
No, it did not. And I was eating my dinner at the time, and they started talking about the baby vomiting, and I was like, okay, now I can't eat my dinner for the next 10 minutes because it turned me off.
But not only that, she just seemed like the squawking wife on the phone, like in old-timey cop shows.
I was thinking she's barefoot and pregnant, but she's already given birth.
Yeah. I'm like, what in the world have they done to this character?
Yeah. And I didn't appreciate her appearance in I think it was the first season we saw her. I was like, she feels like she doesn't know how to play the role anymore. And yeah, that little cameo there just added to that. So
Well, no offense to Marina Sirtis, who I think I met in real life one time,
yeah.
a long time ago. But no offense to her, but I always felt like, you know how a person can have imposter syndrome, but I almost feel like I always felt this vibe watching TNG growing up that I was projecting imposter syndrome on her. like all the other characters in TNG when I was watching it growing up just seemed like they were who they were.
Mm-hmm.
But Deanna Troi or Marina Sirtis always seemed like a person who was pretending to be that person who she was on the show.
Yeah. I feel like in the middle, like maybe from season 3 to season 6, I feel like she found the role. But yeah, early on, I feel like she was never nailed it. She always stood out as an awkward performer. In the movies,
Yes.
I felt the same way. So, yeah.
Yes. And how come we've never before or since seen a counselor play such a prominent role, like in a starship crew, like executive crew?
Yeah, they were testing it out. And it didn't go so well. So they just dropped it.
Like, she even had her own chair on the bridge, for crying out loud.
Yeah, no, that is weird. That is a weird part of TNG. It's like that element of like the hippie culture still lingering in the 1980s or the 70s.
Yeah, it's like they had DEI, I guess, in the 24th century. Yeah, placed prominently right there. But it may sound like we were bashing all 3 of these episodes on the podcast. But no, I actually quite enjoy this stuff. At times, there's been moments during season 3 of Picard where I thought it was better than Strange New Worlds in my mind. But, and we're only 3 episodes in now. But no. If I had to choose one, I'd still definitely choose Strange New Worlds right now. Certainly. It's just there's these moments where I get sucked in to Picard, like here and there.
Yeah.
With this new season.
Just to point out one more moment, there was that scene with Riker. Well, it was when Beverly and Picard were having their discussion, and we see Will and Jack just kind of lingering around the corner.
Yeah.
And we see Riker just smiling at him as Jack is pacing back and forth nervously, and they have their little discussion. That was another moment that I was like, wow, this moment here feels really TNG. I could see this with a younger Will playing out this scene.
That was a good one.
Yeah, so that's nice to see. It's especially with the Next Generation crew. I mean, I just feel like they've been screwed over for so long, so it's nice to see a return to form a little bit here.
Yeah, the other thing that me and Carl remarked was that, prior to this flare-up that happens in this episode, Riker and Picard just seem so comfortable in their own skin and in their characters. I mean, in-universe, actually, right? I mean, out-of-universe as well, but I'm trying to speak more to in-universe right now. And it was nice to see how, and that's the way guys of their stature as retired Federation, I'm not sure if Riker's retired or not, but either way, of guys of their age in Starfleet, it makes, with their reputations, they should walk around with a little bit of swagger.
Yeah, and there's still a part of me, because Picard especially was so reserved in TNG. Like that scene when they're talking about in the bar there, that CGI DH scene. There's a part of me that feels a little weird seeing Picard being so openly emotional and like being so buddy-buddy with Riker. But yeah, they're old men at this point. They change. They don't have to hold to those rigors anymore. But it does just take a little bit for me to see a Picard being that way, because he's so not that in TNG. It's a little bit strange.
That reminds me of something I've encountered in real life that makes me feel like Spock or something, or like an alien in real life. So, I've been in the military, and I've been in paramilitary type organizations as a civilian as well. And like you see in Star Trek, like what you're talking about, I've known leaders, good and bad, or those who I respected or whatever, who were like Picard, like in their demeanor, like at work or whatever, were in the military who were just that guy, like all the time. Very Picard-like. And then as I've gone through the ranks myself and been promoted here and there, I have discovered in real life that when you get promoted to a certain level, all of a sudden these Picard-like leaders, they will, just because your rank changed all of a sudden, they will instantly reveal like another side to themselves within their office, or like, not in front of everybody else, but when they're like in their ready room, so to speak, they'll totally reveal this human side to you. Like it's just like, yeah, I'm just a regular person. I just like to watch football and drink beer. And it's always kind of like taking me aback in real life. Mm-hmm. And this has happened numerous times. And the reason I say I feel like Spock is because I'm the same regardless. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I was in charge and I had this lieutenant and then he got promoted to captain, I wouldn't be like, hey, you're a captain now, so now I'm just going to like completely change my demeanor. No, because I'm the same no matter what. Mm-hmm. I'm the same demeanor, whether I'm a private or a captain. But I find that people around me change just because, now we're in the same status level or something. So in that weird sense, I can totally see it because I've seen it in real life. That being said, it doesn't make sense to me, but it is a thing that does happen in real life.
Yeah, I still don't think that tracks with Picard because we've seen so many interactions with him and Will in TNG, where even though they do have this much closer relationship, and you can tell it's much closer, he's still so robotic and kind of walled off.
True.
Like, we'll discuss that in this coming episode that we're going to talk about.
True, but my counterpoint or devil's advocate response would be, it might be because even though they were close, like a family in TNG, they were still literally superior subordinate relationship.
Yeah.
So you still have and then they're obviously not, like in the flashback sequence. It's my devil's advocate response. But anyway, and I know you're gonna hate this, but me and Carl still did it anyway because I know it feels weird because it is such a serialized show.
Yeah.
But we're still rating. Even if it makes us feel uncomfortable. Oh, this is weird. I had heard that you know how there's like a pre-end credit sequence on these Picard episodes where they show the No, I don't mean like a pre-end, like Marvel style. I mean, there's the end credits, but there's the pre-end credits. So like when they show all the LCARs, the information screens.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know what you mean. You mean when they have like the animation, as they say, like the writer and director credits, or?
Yes, and they're showing the LCAR screens all over the place.
Yeah, I'm going to it. I just ended it immediately once the episode ended, so I'm not.
Okay, so I noticed it obviously in the first episode. So right when the episode ends, it goes into LCAR's displays and it shows all the different executive producers, so-and-so and so-and-so. And it shows all these graphics. And then it gets into the traditional end credits, which is just literally text on screen. And with episode 1, I was saying the pre-end credits feels like it would be the opening credits of the show. It's just they decided to put them on the back end. And I was curious for episode 2 if they were going to put it back to the front. But apparently, they're not doing it like that. Fine. Okay, whatever. But then I noticed, I heard some people say this on YouTube, but I didn't actually check it out. It actually, there's little changes in the pre-end credits scene. And I just noticed a significant one in this episode 3 when it was just playing. So, and there's a lot of Easter eggs from like the first one I watched. And the fact that they're changing it up, that means there's probably like tens of many more Easter eggs in these additional pre-end credit scenes. And some of the Easter eggs are just random Star Trek things, but some of the Easter eggs definitely pertain to the season's story in particular. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. And in the episode 3 sequence that I just watched, there's a big emphasis on a particular musical theme. So I'm curious what that's all about.
Yeah, and I guess talking about potential references, I did want to say the ship, the Shrike. It was, I don't know if this is just me projecting, but it was reminded me a lot of the Hyperion book series, where there's this alien series called the Shrike, and they're these metallic, very kind of pointy edged things. And so I thought maybe this ship being called that was maybe a reference to that book series.
It could be. I don't know anything about the Hyperion series. It could be. But then again, with a name like Shrike, it evokes some type of imagery of something sharp. You
Yeah,
know.
that's fair.
But I mean, it could be both.
Yeah, I just thought I'd throw it out there since I kept thinking that every time they'd say it. But
Yeah, for sure. Because it looks like it would be like some kind of hand weapon. Like you can imagine someone holding it in their hand.
yeah, and by the way, when they do that little animation at the start of before the episode starts,
Yes.
where it's just kind of the ship swirling around, I thought I saw the Shrike up in the corner. I was like, what the hell?
Yes. Yes. I talked about that. No. I was talking about the opening. That thing you're talking about. I was bringing it up to Carl that I noticed with episode 1 of Picard season 3. It was the first time I noticed that they would swap out whatever ship for whatever series you're watching. Because I hadn't noticed that when you watch Lower Decks, it's the Cerritos. When you watch Prodigy, it's the Protostar. When you watch Strange New Worlds, it's the Enterprise. And so, they swap out ships. I did not notice the Shrike. However, on YouTube, it was pointed out that it was just sitting over there. And I was like, oh, shit. That's okay. Okay. Man, it seems like it's all the rage now. Like, Game of Thrones subtly started with the toying with the opening sequences of episodes of shows.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like Andor set a new precedent when they had like the changing opening theme music. And it seems like newer shows these days are taking cues from both of those things, like altering their sequences and altering their themes to reflect things in different episodes. But all right, how are we gonna rate this sucker? I'm just gonna go ahead and say out of 5 containers of changing goop, how many need this episode? And again, we all get it. It's serialized. This is totally imperfect, but it's just kind of like you're kind of rating, I guess, your overall feeling or vibe from this installment.
Yeah, and I'll say, I was gonna say we should do it out of how many drops of internal bleeding should we do? But what was it? Jars of because of course that'll affect the rating, you know.
Absolutely, changeling goop.
Well, if I guess I'm rating this individual chapter of this story, this was the one that got me into the story finally, and so I guess that's a solid rating. I would give it like a 4. It's still, there were still pieces of it that absolutely did not engage me. Anytime Raffi was on screen, I just wanted to go to sleep, or like you said, fast forward. That was just terrible. Even Worf being back with his little one-liners, I was like, the magic just doesn't feel like it's there.
Oh, I'm sad you brought that up. No, because Worf is like really cool to see back, and his new look, he looks a little gaunt, which is a little bit troubling, but he's so cool. But then when he starts throwing out these Roger Moore quips, oh man, that is not cool. It was cool like in some of the TNG movies, I guess. But it feels really weird and immature.
It does.
For his character.
Yeah, no, it's But otherwise, a lot of it was really working, and I'm finally engaged. And I think that little finale when they're drifting into the core of the nebula thing, I was like, okay, I wish I had the next episode so I could just press play right now.
There you go. Yeah, I feel the same way. Totally about that aspect. Yeah, and I want to give it like between a 4 and a 4.5. And I know that sounds crazy because I don't even rate that many episodes as 4.5 like ever in this podcast. But again, this is its own unique situation.
Yeah.
But that said, I'm still not actually at the end of the day. I'm still going to stick to 4 and not 4.5. Just because I'm sure. Well, fingers crossed. There's going to be better episodes to come this season in particular. And it was just really enjoyable. I'm definitely in for the ride. It sounds like I'm being harsh on the podcast, but that's just because I'm overanalyzing things for the show. But honestly, I'm for the most part content sitting at home watching the show. And yeah, there's these little things I don't like, which I pointed out. But you have to understand scale. This is nothing compared to seasons 1 and 2. Seasons 1 and 2 are so over the top bad that, and it's just, this show's so good, and it's just easier for me to talk about the little
dangling threads.
Yeah. So conversation wise, it dominates 80% of the conversation, the negativity. But that's just because we're just parsing things.
Yeah, and the bad parts are much more glaring here. With Star Trek Picard Season 2, it was almost like there was so much bad I didn't even know what to say about it. It was just like, oh god, I just want it to be over.
Yeah, it is extremely over the top bad in my recollection.
Yeah.
Season 2, it just so like you're so
attacked at every angle.
Yeah, people don't like when I compare things because what's a more subtle way of saying something that'll get me kicked off the YouTube algorithm? But it's like being a survivor of things I can't name.
Oh no! You could just say trauma survivor.
Okay, trauma survivor. So it is like, yeah, watching season 2 is like being a trauma survivor. Like, you're so stunned psychologically, physically, like, to answer particular questions about something. You're just like, what? Like there's just too much going on here. Like, how can I even?
Yeah, it makes me wish I could transform into Richard Burton and have that wet brain thing so I could just forget it. Is that terrible? Is that really insensitive?
No. You.
After I said it, I was like, oh, that sounds really rude.
But yeah, stay tuned. Coming next on the feed, I believe, we're going to take a step back in the TNG. But also look forward to, episode 4 of Picard to be coming on the podcast, and other random episodes of, I guess now when I say classic Trek, I guess that applies to like everything Enterprise and pre-Enterprise. So, or everything pre-Kelvin timeline. Expect some more of those to just be sprinkled in here and there. So yeah, until then, this is Eric.
And this is Caleb.
And until next time,
do it.
Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Oh, do you remember what Captain Jellicoe would say? Was it "do it"?
Captain
from Best of Both Worlds. Just since I mentioned him earlier.
I don't know.
I feel like he just said "do it," but
you can just say "do it."
Do it. I like that little effect I do.
What little effect?
Yeah, I noticed there was a strain of RBGs where you would do like what would you call it? Kind of like a reverb effect. That's a hard word to say when I'm drunk. I can't say it.
On our voices?
Yeah, so it almost have like a kind of like a cosmic sound to it. Yeah, you started doing it near the end of the RBG feed, and so I just kept that. I always add that on there.
Oh shit! I didn't know. I don't recall doing that. I'm gonna have to go back and listen.
Yeah, I didn't either.
To exactly what I did.
Yeah, I left it. I didn't do it until I got to that point in the podcast. I was like, oh.
So I started adding a reverb to like the final line.
Yep.
What?
And so once I got to that point in my re-listen, I started doing it on all the episodes after that. Because I don't know, it gives like a cosmic sound to it.
No, I like it. It's a great idea. I have no memory of it. This is like when people in real life, they'll tell me like, oh, I like that joke you said like last Christmas. And I'll go like, what? And they tell it to me. And I'll say, man, that's a really good joke. Like I have no memory of saying that. Like I believe you. I think it's a funny joke, but I have no recollection of like ever saying those words. It sounds like my material, but I just don't remember.
It tells me I haven't listened to any of the episodes for the past like 20 episodes, I think. I think that's when I started doing it.
And whenever I get into like listening to my own self, like on podcasts, like especially older podcasts I've recorded, I'll be listening to an old Best Picture or Shaken Not Stirred, or like with Shaken Not Stirred, I'd be like watching the movie, listening to our commentary,
Mm-hmm.
and as I'm watching the movie, I'll have a thought in my head which I think I'm having for the first time, and then I'll hear myself say it like on the commentary, like, you know what I mean, like, or like Steven will say something as I'm listening to the podcast, and then as a listener, I'll think of a quip, and then I'll hear myself say it, like in the pod. That's happened many times. If I listen to my old self, I'll still have the same thoughts. It's like really weird, even though I don't remember it happening.
What's sad for me is I've listened to those because every now and again I'll watch those movies with the commentaries, the SNS commentaries, and I'll always think of like jokes that are coming up to a scene. I'm like, oh, this scene's coming. I'll make this joke to myself in my head. But then it'll come out on the podcast. I was like, oh crap, I guess I remember they said that, and it's weird.
You never know, because like you never know if maybe you had the same thought, or who knows where it came from.